In today's Wishwatalk, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Ms. Sarada Kalavapudi. Sarada Kalavapudi is a highly accomplished professional with a diverse educational and professional background. Her academic journey includes a master's degree in psychology and education in market research from esteemed institutions like MICA and product innovation from Harvard University. With over 2 decades of work experience, Sarada has built a successful career primarily in product management, working with Fortune 500 companies in both B2C and B2B domains. Currently, Sharada is leading a non-profit organization which is dedicated to biodiversity conservation and climate sciences. Her leadership in this space reflects her deep commitment to addressing some of the most pressing global challenges. Ms. Sharada's career is a true embodiment of the spirit of lifelong learning. Her relentless pursuit of knowledge and passion for tackling complex, evolving challenges are qualities that have shaped her success. As we dive into today's interesting discussion, I would like to inform the audience that our speaker will be taking the questions from you after the main talk. So please leave your questions in the chat box or use raise hand tool. And I request everyone to turn on your webcams for interactive activities. So without further ado, let us welcome our speaker, Ms. Sarada Kalavapudi, to share her insights. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen, Radhika?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Radhika, for that lovely introduction. And thanks to Wishwatalk for bringing me back to this really nice session again. So as Radhika was sharing, I have a realm of experience across various verticals, but today we'll be concentrating on the climate change and the innovations that are taking place in this space. Okay. Is this clear? Okay. So before we begin, what I want to introduce here is, while we're talking about innovations to address climate change, I have sort of tried to give a realm of solutions that are happening across various verticals and staying true to what Vishwa talks about, which is to ignite curious minds. These solutions or innovations that we're referring to here in this discussion are more to show a spread of solutions and not a deep dive into each one of them. So we'll start right away. To begin with, let's talk about what is climate change, right? So we've been looking at news every day where cities are getting indulged with rainwater, farms are failing, farm producers are failing, and of course, we are not even able to breathe the air that's around us, especially cities like Delhi and others are facing this even more. So climate change basically boils down to literally the excess amount of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases that are trapped in the atmosphere around the Earth, which is resulting in excess heat, rainfall in unnatural or not the cyclical times that we're relatively used to. So climate change is causing a whole lot of, I would say, destruction, things that we've not seen before, especially this generation. And so what is happening across the globe to solve these issues that we're seeing, right? It's not just the weather. Right from our travel, where we use a lot of fossil fuel, our industries, our food chains, our infrastructure, our cities, the clothes that we wear, everything, everyday life is going to be affected even more so than we're seeing today. And what is happening across the globe to solve this is something that I'm trying to share here. So broadly, again, if we were to summarize what is causing and what is the effect of climate change, climate change has always been there across the Earth for a very, very long time. It's a natural phenomenon. But starting with our industrialization process, we have sort of caused much more damage to this whole process, where our increase in energy usage, our agricultural practices, the way we are deforesting the land, our consumer behavior, where we sort of consume much more than what we give back to earth, our livestock management practices, the amount of resources we are extracting from earth, all of these are causing even worse, or the effects are becoming much more unmanageable, so to say. And of course, because of this, there is a relatively increase in the temperature that we're facing every day. This year, till beginning of November, Mount Fuji, which is like one of the most visited tourist spots in Japan, did not have any snowfall. So it was almost like a regular mountain with no snowcap. And the snow started to fall only later in the month of November. These are things that are very visible to us. We're seeing in our own cities what is happening with this change. Temperatures are going up, sea levels are increasing, the weather patterns have become more unpredictable, and so on. So what I'm trying to arrive at is the solutions that we are trying to put in place, or the innovations that we're doing in this space to address all of this, are very, very varied and very vast, depending on which vertical of issues we're looking at. So again, if we were to just see what is it that is happening across the globe, right now the focus is only on how can energy be replaced with something that's renewable? How do we stop or reduce using fossil fuels? How do we make our mobility better? So you're seeing a better adoption of electric vehicles, and bring in this element of sustainability, and how do we reduce pollution? So these are the broad areas that we're looking at, but there's much more that is happening. So now I'm concentrating on the energy part of it. We have been looking at how EVs are being adopted across both globally and in India. We keep hearing about Tesla, we keep hearing about BYD brand in China, and even in India, the Ola and the other vehicles which are electric vehicles have been in news for a long time. So I'm not focusing on something that is very known to us. I'm looking at topics that are not relatively unknown. So there is something called as unified energy interface that India is working on today in the realm of technology. And what is UEI? Let's say, for example, you and me are using an electric vehicle. And at some point, obviously, we need to sort of put the power back into it. So each vehicle may have a different way of plugging in, what is the volts that is required, what is the wattage, how much time do you need to charge it, and so on. So just like UPI, where all our payments are sort of integrated, UEI is something where our technical teams in the country are addressing, where, for example, you use ABC vehicle and I use XYZ vehicle, right? Both of us should be able to use the same energy spot. So just like our petrol bunks and fuel banks that you're seeing, what is the unified way of exchanging power when you're using for your vehicles and so on? So both the sources and the users will be mapped onto the same platform. And this is the beginning of a project which is going to take a very long time. They're also putting in some amount of, it's called BSCKAN protocol. But a lot of tech jargon here, but broadly what it's saying is, if tomorrow you need a replacement for petrol bunks that we're so used to, what is the common ground of power exchange when you're using electric vehicles and so on? So this is something that's being built right now. Again, just to go back to the way I'm giving this talk, I'm trying to ignite your curious minds rather than doing a deep dive. And anyone who's interested in the topic, obviously we can always have a detailed conversation later. In terms of the energy sources itself, there is something called as International Solar Alliance. And this is something that a group of countries, and most countries across the globe, are trying to join, where the countries are around the tropics. So there is much more sunlight. And instead of following up on the fossil fuel extraction, how do we sort of harness the solar energy is something that this international alliance is looking at. And India is a very active partner in this. So again, I request the participants to sort of, do a deep dive by visiting their website and so on. But what this alliance is doing, you may say, why is this an innovation at all? Is our world has always run on energy politics. Okay, if a particular country has fossil fuel, the rest of the countries are dependent on it. And now the countries that are around the tropics, which are relatively poorer, so to say, than the northern global north, Now these countries have a way to say, if we really harness solar power as much as we can and the best way possible, then these countries, their reliance on the fossil fuel countries will come down. Their expense on importing oil from other countries will come down. And obviously the profits are so many more. But this alliance is sort of the driving force today to sort of make sure that solar is adopted. How is it financed? How is it, technically, what are the innovations that are happening? So ISA is a big player in that. And again, in solar, and again, globally, people are referring to solar as the energy that we can look at, because it's ample, there's availability everywhere across these countries. So when we're talking about innovation, it's not just some new technology or so, right? Even if you bring down the cost of manufacturing solar panels, if you bring down the reliance of the product materials that are more difficult to harness from the earth, if you can do anything to build up the efficiencies of a particular source of power, all of these are innovations. So when we're talking about what are the new things that are going on, solar has been there from very, very long time. It's not something new, but the innovations that are happening are the materials that are being put to use. So one of the bigger problems in solar is, for example, you need a lot of area. How much land can you provide for solar panels, right? So it could be vertically farmed too. And so there are new materials. I'm not going into the chemicals and the rest of the details of the materials, but just to give you an idea, it's possible that tomorrow your glass panels on your walls can harness solar power. Okay, so that those are the innovations that are going on there. At the same time, one of the biggest advantage, or with all the technology innovations and people putting in their minds to solve this, is how the price of a solar panel and the entire element of harnessing power from solar has dropped drastically. So if you look at this graph, so you can see that the cost from $100 for 1 megawatt in 1960s has dropped to less than $1. So something like this then sort of triggers a lot more innovation in other areas where you need a lot of power, but it's too expensive. So things like, for example, I'm going into the energy space, focusing on the green hydrogen. So green hydrogen is when you harness power through using hydrogen, which is again amply available, just like solar across the globe. This has always been there, but because the solar prices have dropped, now there is a lot of innovation happening in hydrogen, where a lot of startups are coming up, because when you want to produce green hydrogen, the one that triggers the entire process is power, which you are no longer reliant on fossil fuel. You can use solar. So in green hydrogen space, I'm sorry, I think my screen is moving, but just to give you an idea, sorry, that's my pet. So in the green hydrogen space, sorry, there is a lot of innovation happening in production, the storage of hydrogen, how hydrogen is processed, what is the infrastructure needed to sort of move the hydrogen from one place to another, and the actual usage of green hydrogen. Now, for all of this, because the solar power prices have dropped drastically across the years, it is becoming possible for people to focus on green hydrogen much more, which wasn't possible a few years earlier. So, there is a sort of a cyclical reaction where some energy source price drops, then there's a whole lot of innovation happening in other areas. So even in India, for example, now the government has begun something called as a National Green Hydrogen Mission, where they're encouraging all the people to sort of start putting in their innovation and R&D money, and also to start producing hydrogen. So there are a lot of, what should I say, the countries' focus is moving into renewables much more, not just in solar, but also into the green hydrogen space. So that's just to give you an idea of what are the new things happening in the power sector, which is one of the biggest. If we can somehow move to renewables and cut down our usage of fossil fuels, not only is it, of course, helpful for addressing climate change, even from our country's perspective, the amount of imports that we do today to bring in the oil our huge population, and our needs will come down drastically. So this is in the energy space. The same way across the globe, other than the green hydrogen and solar, of course, a lot of work is going on in, again, bringing back the focus onto nuclear energy. Now, this was not a topic that was being spoken about even last year or the year before that. But now, for example, all the data centers, and again, I will go into the tech side of things. All of us are using ChatGPT. We are using much more of our digital footprint has increased drastically. In a countries, in India itself, even if like 10% of population is using tech, our digital footprint and carbon footprint is much, much higher. And just to give you all how much of energy is going to be consumed for using something like this, if every time that we do a query on ChatGPT, it is like switching on your bulb for almost 20 days or something like that. It's not cheap. So the energy consumption is drastically going to increase. And the data centers that are powering these AI and other tools that are now, of course, in use, companies like Meta, Microsoft, or X, all of these people are struggling to understand how to manage the data centers with so much power consumption. So they are now focusing on using nuclear. And that's the word that you see here. It's called small modular reactors. They're called SMR. And a few years ago, everyone was wary of nuclear, and rightly so. And but now there is a revisit to see how can we keep things safe. It's time that we start using much more cleaner energy, because the emissions are much lower when you use, or almost close to zero when you use nuclear. So there is again a revisiting of this topic. And India also now is asking all the state governments, and not just state governments, but also the entire energy supply, to start revisiting this whole concept of how do we go back to using reactors. All of these are in the initial stages, but it's good to see that there is a revisit of an existing power source, which has been sort of locked up or not revisited for a very long time, because our understanding of nuclear and what it can cause because of the accidents that we've seen and the bombs that have been put to use. Now there is a revisit to see how do we sort of use it in a much safer way. Is this our, one of the sources of cleaner energy, is something that is being revisited. So this is on the energy space. And now I'm going into the topic of completely a new topic. Even the way we consume our food, the way we consume our, how the food sort of moves from production to the rest of the world, the entire space is being revisited with the understanding of bringing down the carbon footprint. So one of the biggest sources of emissions is meat industry. And in India, we are not too aware of, or we don't pay attention to it, because our meat industry is much smaller, our poultry industry is bigger. But the source of meat or protein in the rest of the world depends on these huge cattle farms. And the methane emissions from cattle is something that the entire world has recognized to be one of the biggest polluters for methane and other greenhouse gas emissions. So there are a lot of startups, again, that are coming up to replace the food space itself. So how do you sort of, make sure that you offer something which tastes like meat, which feels like meat, but is not coming from the cattle industry? So again, there are a lot of startups, and then you have something like Green Burger, or where they're using food like jackfruit to, when you cook. And I think most of you all would have tasted the jackfruit biryani. At least it's popular in Hyderabad weddings, which is served to the vegetarians. But it feels like meat. It can taste like meat if you wanted to. So I'm just giving an example, but there is a lot of innovation happening in how do we use more of the vegetarian grown food to sort of replace what people are used to, which is the meat, just because of the carbon footprint that it this is like the food replacement market map. I'm just giving an example of the startups in the space. And it's not just the replacement. If you're interested in what's happening in India, for example, in the food systems, then I would want you all to go and look at Bharat Agri. There is a very good podcast on this from Think School, where they're trying to bring innovation into how farming is managed. And you may ask me, why is it that it's connected to climate change? Our food systems are intrinsically tied to how much rainfall comes. Is the soil good enough for growing a crop? Are the systems to sort of transport food from one place to another with lesser carbon footprint? So food industry is tightly coupled with how the climate works. If tomorrow, if the rainfall hits us like it has hit Spain and other parts of the world that you've seen in Florida and so on, where 1 year's rainfall fell in 2 days, your city is going to be swamped, which is what we see. But the farmers are going to face a completely different set of issues where they cannot grow produce, which means our food systems will collapse. So companies like Bharat Agri and others who are sort of trying to bring sort of science to the art of agriculture, which is much needed. So innovation and change need not be something, we always think innovation is, you do some science lab experiments and some new product comes out. The solutions could be something in the way you change the way you do things. You change the way you're measuring up your soil or identifying which crop to place. How do you make sure that the farmer makes more money while using less water? And so on. So even companies like Bharat Agri are important in this space to sort of bring that innovation. And there are other ways. For example, rice as such consumes a whole lot of water, which is the cereal that most South Indians and across the globe, it's consumed as one of the biggest source of our carbohydrates. There are companies that are looking at replacing, not replacing, but is there, in our plate or in our thali, can we add more millets and bring down the rice quantity? It's possible. So companies like Millet Bank, they are also trying to see how millets can be brought into the mainstream of our food consumption, and even not just as a cereal, but there would also be processed food like pasta and so on. And innovation, of course, we are all very aware of how hydroponics is being put to use to sort of see how we can grow food and our crops with as less water as possible, or sometimes even with no soil. So in hydroponics also now there is a whole lot of research into the specific vertical farming, and also sometimes they're using more of floaters on water bodies, where how do you sort of minimize the amount of water that is needed? How do you sort of grow even cereal crops using some techniques like these? There's a whole lot of innovation happening there. Today, we are not at a point where our main carbohydrate source can be replaced from the regular farming practices. We've just shifted to maybe some of the vegetables, some of the greens are growing up in these greenhouses or vertical crops. But again, there is a whole lot of innovation happening in this space. And what I'm trying to do in this talk is sort of ignite your curious minds to see there's so many areas that we can all focus on to sort of bring in more R&D, research and development. We always think about energy, but it could be the food systems too. And sometimes even transporting this food from one place to another, or the carbon footprint that is burnt because of the food practices that we have, can be revisited. So as I was saying, beef has the biggest carbon footprint. Again, I'm taking a global view here. And this chart sort of tells us how much of footprint each of these types of food offers. And you'll be happy to know that WWF came back with a news article saying that Indian food habits are the best. So if everyone on the globe was having an Indian thali or the Indian style of food, then our climate goals can be met much more easily, because it's one country where we eat fresh food that is made, and the burden falls on the housewives and the mothers in the house. But we eat fresh food thrice a day or sometimes even more, which is very different from the rest of the world, where there is so much more of processed food that is being taken in. So Indian food systems are something that can be taught to, or there's a lot of learning that we can take from India to the rest of the world. And maybe our food practices can, if it can survive a country with our population size, then it's possible that these learnings can be taken to the rest of the world too. So that's on the food practices. I'm just moving to the other part of food or the way we use it. We use a lot of packaged material to serve food today in our, whether we use Swiggy or whether you're going to a restaurant or whether you're packing food, or sometimes it just may be biscuits that are packed into a plastic wrapper. The packaging industry is one of the biggest polluters. So there are a lot of innovations happening to see how is it that we can package food better. So for example, in India, there are a few startups that are using rice husk and wheat husk to sort of make sustainable packaging products that are more greener or sustainable to use. And this solves two problems. And I want to draw your attention to the concept of circular economy here. So in Delhi, we keep hearing that the AQI is the worst right now in the entire world right now, both Delhi and Lahore. And that's primarily because the farms are being burnt. Once the crop comes in, the farms are burnt, and that sort of hits the air, the pollution goes up, and then there is smog coming into the cities, which brings down the visibility, which gives breathing problems, and so on. So imagine if there is innovation happening where the same thing that you're burning, you don't burn, but you cut and then you use for your packaged materials. So the circular economy sort of says that if you can use raw materials that are waste for another company or a source, and you put it to use elsewhere to make it more usable or sometimes even profitable. And we keep using waste management. Sometimes it's not waste management, but it is basically one industry's waste is the input for another industry. And we can sort of map these. And in the case of this packaging that you're seeing, this is basically the left side, whatever products you're seeing are made from rice husk, which is a waste product which farmers usually burn. But then it's become a source for packaging industry where someone is actually making money off it. And innovation can happen to identify these gaps, or what can be waste for one can be the input for another. So how do you sort of bridge these is something that a lot of thought needs to go in. And maybe even the digital worlds can sort of come in to map these requirements. So this is on the food. I'm jumping to another completely different topic, which is fashion and textiles, and all the clothes that we wear on a regular basis comes from the textile industry. And again, this is a European statistic, but tells you, so every fabric that is made, be it cotton or a blended one, or you're using plastic and so on, textiles are one of the worst pollutants, both in terms of how much we take from the earth to sort of clothe ourselves, but also how we don't reuse our clothing, right? We keep buying more and more, which then goes into landfills. And our land usage, right now, it's all being dumped in Africa and some other countries. So we don't actually see it up firsthand. But textiles are one of the worst polluters too. So there is, again, a lot happening in terms of revisiting how we use textiles, how we produce textiles, how are they being used, each individual, how much of purchases are happening in textiles, how do you make it more sustainable. So again, this is a chart that talks about the fashion footprint, big numbers here, but again, recycling, reusing, and again, Indians are experts at this. What is a t-shirt for the older one in the house then becomes for the younger one, then it goes to pocha, then it becomes cleaning cloth and so on. So we are experts at this. But if you take a global stance, there is again something that a lot is happening. So for example, all the plastic that is being thrown into the seas today, which is again another polluter, big brands like Adidas and others are revisiting and saying, and they're actually marketing it, saying that we'll collect the plastic from the oceans and then make shoes out of it. And while this is an example, even the textiles itself can reuse plastic, which may not be the best thing to wear. But again, from an innovation point of view, there are a lot of people revisiting about how wasted plastic, recycling cotton, etc., could bring in back another set of clothes that could be used. So there is one thing that I want to stress on here is how much a consumer can sort of affect this. So for example, a brand like H&M, which is one of the biggest fast retailers across the globe, is now forced to set up recycling units inside their shops. So they are now promoting, saying, let's close the loop, where you bring in your used clothes and dump them into H&M shops, and they then sort of recycle it again to make sure that fresh clothes are made out of it, or at least they're discarded more sustainably. And while this is a marketing gimmick, these are the beginnings of what could become the norm for the industry as we go forward. And the pressure is for the consumers to say that We don't want to be purchasing something where for one cotton cloth, you're sort of, the amount of water that's put to use is so high, and then you dye it with chemicals which are not sustainable, then it all goes back into the ground. So when there is a pushback, even the retailers and the marketeers are now revisiting to see, yes, I will sell you clothes, but I will also help you sort of recycle the clothes. And that's sort of become, it's going to be the mantra for even the retailers, so to say. So from fashion again, I'm moving into a completely different topic here, which is our oceans. Now, again, in the team or the audiences that are here, all of us would have heard about Greta talking about this youngster who talks about climate, right? But how many of us have heard a boy's name called Boyan Slat? Now, he is a much more the person that should be known to all of us, because he single-handedly sort of revisited how our oceans are. And for all of us who are not staying close to the coastal lines, we're cut off as urban people from what's happening in oceans. We see beautiful tourism pictures, and then you say, okay, the beaches are looking clean and nice, and so on. But oceans actually form a big part of our life, although we don't realize, because our food supply comes through ships. The fuel that our country uses comes through ships. If ships were to stop, transversing through the oceans, we may not have food systems in place, we may not have medicines in place, we may not have fuel to run the country. So shipping industry sort of forms the, I think almost more than 50% of the economy is based on the shipping lines. Now, along with shipping comes how we harness the oceans for our food, which is basically a fishery industry. And then we have all the waste that is there, whether it's organic waste or sewage water or plastic. It's ending up in the oceans. And why do we need to worry about oceans, right? Okay, oceans can be dumped. More than 70% or bigger chunk of than that of the land of the earth is oceans. So why should we worry about what's happening to the oceans? Now, oceans play a very big part in our something as simple as monsoons that we look forward to for our agriculture, and rainfall and our water sources is a result of how our oceans behave. And oceans are getting acidified because of climate change, which means that our water cycles and the rain cycles, everything is getting disrupted. And as a part of all of that, the amount of plastic that is getting dumped into the ocean means that the life in oceans is getting affected. And why do we need to worry about that? Because a big source of our protein food is fisheries industry, no doubt. But also it means that these plastics are reaching our food chains continuously. So oceans need to be cleaned up first with the existing plastic that is there, and then also stop all the sewage and the dirt that is hitting the oceans, right? So this boy called Boyan Slat, no longer a boy, but when he started, he was hardly 17 or so. He started a startup called the Ocean Cleanup. And what they do is they mechanize and they send out these big sea trawlers to collect the plastic and then bring it back and recycle it. So they call it the largest cleanup in history. And he's been very successful in sort of cleaning up where he comes from. I think it's Netherlands. So that's something that's happening on the ocean side of things when it comes to climate change and the amount of plastic that they're dumping in. Other than that, in the oceans, we have a lot of life, and reefs are something that are like forests on the land. Reefs are in the ocean, sort of protecting the ecosystems there. And reefs are getting bleached because of the acidification in oceans. So there are startups that are looking at how do we introduce artificial reefs into the oceans so that these ecosystems don't collapse. And we even have some of the youngsters from India sort of looking at how to sort of introduce these artificial reefs at the lowest cost possible. And new technology like 3D printing and others have been put to use. So again, my idea is to sort of give you a span of all the things that are happening across various verticals. So I'm jumping from one topic to another. It may seem like too much, but this is just like the top of the innovation or the change that is happening across the globe in various verticals. Coming back to the oceans, and again, why we need to sort of focus, especially in India, we have one of the longest coastlines. And if you look at our own fishery industry, and even from security perspective, Our oceans are to be protected. The way we sort of run our economy could take a huge boost if we manage what we call as the blue economy. And blue economy could involve anything and everything related to shipping. It could be to harness power from the seas. It could be to do with aquaculture. Again, across the globe, there is a lot happening in the aquaculture side of things. They're trying to do it in a more organic or a natural way where you don't affect the oceans too much. And in the future, this may be the source of our protein. If the meat industry is either stopped due to regulations or it collapses, seas will be the biggest source of our protein food. So it's important that we sort of focus on the innovation that needs to be done in this space. So even India, again, I just want to highlight that the government and the country today is focusing on all the innovations that need to happen in various sectors, including the what's called as the blue economy mission. And startups are being encouraged to sort of look at the entire blue economy, so to say. Anything to do with the oceans and the water, it could be food, it could be using new green hydrogen for helping the shipping industry to bring down the cost, because the fuel used there also needs to be revisited. So there's a whole lot of sort of revisiting how we can look at innovations to help the blue economy is also happening. Then I'm moving into a completely different topic, which hits us every day, especially people who are in the urban centers in India. When it rains, it's pouring now. And when it pours, the water is stuck, cities are flooded. At the same time, come summer, we don't have enough water to drink. So this is going to get worse because our entire climate systems, like I was saying, are at a point where the weather is being impacted in a way where we're not able to predict anymore. It's November in Hyderabad, and people have not even pulled out a single sweater. It's still warm and hot. 10 years ago, November, you can look at the temperatures in the city of Hyderabad. You would be carrying at least a sweater, if not a shawl and so on. It was cold. Now it is not. In the same way, during the rainy season, when it rains, it was spread across the year or the monsoon season, right? Now, when it rains, it's possible that the amount of rainfall that we were receiving through the year is falling down in just 2 days. And that's happening across Europe now. Spain is flooded. Florida had the hurricane a few months ago. A few months before that, Vietnam and China were hit by hurricanes. And what is happening is, it's not that we will not receive water or the cities are going dry. We're receiving rainfall, but we don't have systems to capture that water, or the city flooding is happening because our infrastructure is not up to it. So again, there is a lot of rethinking on how city should manage this. So here I am trying to again share what China is doing. They call them the sponge cities. Sponge as in the material that we use to wipe, sponge. So they're calling the city as a sponge, which means where you sort of re-architect how a city is done to make sure that excess water is sort of stored in systems that are inbuilt into the design of the city. And that's water then is sort of recirculated to be your drinking water or to be used in toilets or to irrigation and so on. But we don't allow any rainwater to mix with the storm or the drainage water, which is the biggest problem that India has today. So these sponge cities may be the future for all, not just cities that receive a lot of rainfall today. It could be even in the deserts. And we've seen last year, I think Dubai, was it this year, was flooded. It's a desert city. And there was too much rainfall in just 2 days. Now, that could be climate change. It could be because they were doing cloud seeding. But whatever the reason, the entire way that we look at our infrastructure needs to be revisited, because temperatures are going to go up. And when it rains, there's going to be too much water for us to sort of manage it within the city premises. How do we sort of absorb that rainwater, take rain harvesting to the city level, basically, not at an individual house level? So China is spending a lot to make sure that each city then is called a sponge city to store up the water. Similarly, Japan has always had a problem with too much rain in, I'm not sure if it's Tokyo or another city there, but they have stadiums and they have huge entire cities, structures have another basement, 2 or 3 levels where they can store water when it rains. And then they sort of use those storage systems to sort of reuse it later. But first, the city doesn't get flooded. So there are a lot of systems that are being built and also revisited. Same way in Netherlands, they are trying to use, you can call it concrete or asphalt that is put onto the roads. Can that absorb water? Because today our roads don't absorb water, or they don't allow for any water percolation, and then they're cementing the whole city. Basically, we're saying let the water come in, it will be flooded like a swimming pool because the water doesn't have a place for it to sort of go back into the ground. So how do you sort of revisit this entire city infrastructure to allow for the changes that climate change is bringing in, and we still survive it either by not getting flooded out or by a drought situation where we don't have drinking water? So again, in Hyderabad too and across the country, we have a lot of startups revisiting this. All of these are like small dots of change that are happening. It may take a longer time to sort of percolate into mainstream, but work is certainly happening in this area. So again, Netherlands, I just want to bring in how all the cities and countries are sort of revisiting when there is excess energy in some place, or whether there's excess water, how do we then sort of put into a circular sort of usage, right? Earlier, it was just left out. So Netherlands, for example, has one of the biggest data centers where there's a lot of heat that is generated. So when you have a lot of computers and server systems, imagine when you're using your PC, right, it gets heated up. When you use your mobile, it gets heated up for a long time. So imagine if in a data center with thousands of servers, if they get heated up, that excess heat is usually cooled down with a lot of water to make the systems cooler. So now instead of doing that, they're using that heat to send them back into farms because it's a very cold country. And they're using that to grow agriculture in these greenhouses where this heat is then trapped. And even in the peak of their winter where everything is frozen, then that sort of helps the farms. And that is basically reusing waste from one place to sort of put it to better use where it's needed. So again, a lot of heat, especially in the colder countries, they're trying to see, it is a very expensive proposition. Can they heat their houses with the excess heat that is being generated by these computers and data centers? Can it be put to use in greenhouses? So again, a lot of this that I'm trying to bring to your notice is more of how we need to revisit our systems with this lens in hand that things are changing fast. The temperatures will change, the rainfall will change, excess heat will be there, or our oceans are getting acidified, our food sources are getting corrupted. All of these systems sort of need to be seen with the view of how do we cut down on carbon emissions. And for that, a lot of rethinking, whether you call it innovation or how we solve for it, the way we look at things need to drastically change. And the whole reason of giving the spread of things is to sort of ignite your curious minds around it. So broadly, again, from an industry's perspective, they're saying to no, the solutions lie in cutting down carbon emissions. How do we bring down the sea level? How do we reduce our fossil fuel consumption? How do we control this extreme weather and make it livable for people? And how do we decrease the temperatures that we're seeing? That is from an industry's perspective. But from a smaller scale of industry, the focus is going to be on how do we build a circular economy where, like as we're sharing in a small way, one industry's output will become an input for another industry, and they need to be in geographical proximity. You can't say, again, I'll ship this another 1,000 kilometers to another place. How do we sort of build this economy where it sort of, there is no waste, basically. Something that's coming out from one place becomes an input for another. And all these sort of need to be knit together into a place where it's readily usable. And I think the direction of what we're calling today as the green economy or the blue economy, which is what, again, globally, instead of saying just the job market, they're saying the green economy and the blue economy will explode, where we sort of need to sort of bring in the circular economy as a bridge so we can save ourselves. So I'll stop with that. Again, just this is a small slide on Dharmavana. This is the non-profit that I come from. In a small way, we sort of try to conserve the forest species in the Deccan area and the Eastern Ghats. So I will stop here and I will take questions, but I just hope that this sort of has ignited your curiosity in different verticals about all the things that are happening. And also, I hope that when we talk about innovation, we're not talking about some drastic scientific output, but also rethinking our systems. If I've been able to achieve that, then I'll be happy. Yeah, Radhika, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, ma'am. That was very inspiring talk. And before we move on to question and answer session, I would like to request the audience to take a short poll. And the purpose of the poll is to understand you a little better so that we can better tailor the topics that we bring to you. Yeah, you can stop sharing your screen, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that.
Okay.
Can't find the handle for it.
Okay. And now our
Can you do that
founder,
for
Shri.
me?
No, ma'am. It would. Yeah, it's done. Yeah, our founder is here, Ms. Srivani.
Namaste. Thank you so much, Sarda. This is the need of the hour. Climate change is actually a scary thing that's happening. And for you to be working in this field itself is serving Mother Earth.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
And working towards awareness at a time when we don't know which direction either the environment is going, the climate is going to, or the people are going through. When everything is so fluid and unpredictable, trying to get some reason, some awareness is a Herculean task. For you to work in this field, a big thank you to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah, when I started putting this together, I was of the view that I should not talk about what is climate change. We're all facing it. But also when we talk about solutions today, it is, we have this mindset that some innovation will come and one arrow is going to solve everything, or there'll be one solution that will automatically change our ways and allow us to live on earth continuously with no problem. But it doesn't look like that. Just like they say, death is death by 1,000 cuts. I think we need to live with 10,000 solutions that will need to be put together. And the solutions are spread across. So my idea was to sort of bring at least the thinking or the curiosity in this audience's minds to that there is no single solution. You just have to revisit almost everything that we are doing on a daily basis. Our industries, the way we live, and what can we do to sort of innovate is a big word, but that's the one that sort of captures. So I hope this talk was helpful enough.
Yeah, I would also like to thank the audience, a very learned audience from across the country and some of you all from abroad. Big thank you to all of you. It shows your passion, your commitment in this field. And thank you to the Wishwatalks team, amazing team. You all are doing a fantastic job and so selflessly. Thank you, Radhika, and your entire team. Yeah. Just wanted to say a little bit about Vishwa. Vishwa has recently declared Hyderabad will be a zero waste city. It's not an easy task. It's a Herculean task. And in our own little way, we want to contribute to cutting down the carbon emissions in the world, and to ensure that the amount of waste that is going into the landfill in Hyderabad cuts down. Those of you who would like to participate in whichever way you all want to, please share your details in the chat box. Really, really looking forward for support, whether it is in cash or in kind, in whichever way you all can support. Please do participate. Little bit about, we just completed Vishwa Materials. A big thank you to all the donors. There were more than around 200 people. And when I say one person, it could actually be an entire apartment building who donated their old stuff. India, basically, every festival in Diwali time, we actually clean up our homes of items we don't use. And I wanted to revive that culture. And a lot of people have responded. And this has been donated to a lot of slums. These days in the slums, we have children who have passed out of their degree, 10th class, 12th class degree. Akhilesh, will you be able to put at least 30 seconds of the kind of people who have received this material? Very happy. Some of them have been mentioning, our entire year's requirement of material, we have stopped. We don't need to buy anything this year, clothes. So thanks to all the donors, young and adult, some of them, even see, these are all the youngsters, who've passed out of degree and who have received the material in one of the slums in Hyderabad. And like this, Rakesh has been covering at least a minimum of 5 slums every season. We only do this twice a year, just not because it's our main way of business, but we want to bring back the circular economy. We want to make it fashionable for people to wear on hand-me-downs. My own children use the hand-me-downs of their cousins, and they still do. I'm really proud to say my children who are now in their 20s share clothes with their cousins. And very happy what Vishwa has done, the kind of impact it has made, the truckloads of stuff that some of the apartments have given. A big thank you to all of them. Some of them who have moved cities have actually vacated their entire house and donated. This little boy, Ved, I'm not sure which community, I think it is Ramki Marvel, if I'm not wrong. The entire building had donated. All these kids have donated. Yeah. So yeah, that was a very successful thing. We'll do it again in Ugadi time. We've also done, we want to go into vocational training in a big way. We want to go into skill training. We've just put our first step. We're training people in computer training. Akhilesh, would you like to put up the latest pictures of the people who are getting trained right now? So yeah, we're doing a little bit of training to these youngsters because these days, most of them, if you want a job, you should know at least how to use Excel or a doc, and most of these kids don't have no access to computers. So if any of you all have computers which you all can donate, or know IT companies which can donate computers, please feel free to say. We're thankful to one organization, I think it's the Rotary, if I'm not wrong, who've donated some computers, and we are presently using it in training kids. With this, I will close the talk. Coming up with I'll share the upcoming talks. The next talks is by Sheetal Parmar, From Waste to Resource, How Communities Can Lead the Way. The founder, Gandipet Welfare Society. This is on 23rd November 2024. An excellent organization. I myself have personally gone and seen. They have taken landfills from the government and they are collecting waste. An unthankful job, segregating the plastics and the recyclables from the wet waste with the hands, and then converting it into the composts, and they are baling the recyclables and sending it to factories. And the hazardous waste, they are using some kind of a technology to make it into ash bricks. A fantastic community, society, fantastic work that they are doing. Somebody you should really look forward to, respect for even if it's a little way, the contribution they're doing. I don't know whether it is little or more, but they're handling at least a few square kilometers in Hyderabad. Yeah, and then talk after that is on art and culture by Sumitra Veluri. She's a Kuchipudi PhD, dance PhD. She's exploring the key elements of classical dance. This is on 14th December 2024, 11 a.m. Now, sometimes Vishwa is unable to send any kind of advertisements. So mostly it's word of mouth. So please share it with your friends and family because that's the only way Vishwa can move forward. With this, I'll jump on to the question and answer session. For those of you who are interested, Shmail, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very interesting presentation about so important subject, so important topic. And my question is how technologies, how innovations to effectively address climate changes can support improvement social and economic well-being. How innovations to address climate changes can support resolution so hard problems of social inequality and poverty.
So, I mean, we are also agreeing to the fact that for climate change, the two big things that we all need to revisit. One is, how do you sort of reduce the carbon emissions? It could be in the industry, it could be in the agriculture, it could be in our daily lifestyle. And the other part is, already there are a lot of carbon emissions out there. How do we sort of retract the amount of carbon dioxide or remove methane from air and so on? So in these two, the big words that are used are adaptation and mitigation, if you were to look at it technically. But in these two areas, there is a lot of revisiting that needs to happen, and science and technology can play a role. It could be the way the systems that have been built could be revisited. It could be our own lifestyle that needs to be changed. So there are multiple factors in each of these verticals. Small and big innovations need to come sort of together, and only when all of them come together will we be able to survive the next few years.
I can share some of my personal experiences, Shmuel. Today, it's a very sorry state in the area that I live in. When I go to the villages, what we are welcomed with is huge landfills of trash. And in fact, our next talk by GWS, Gandipet Welfare Society, innovative. They have done it on their own. And the kind of equipment they're using are completely locally made one, whether it is shredders, whether it is balers, whether it is composting techniques they're using, or even the incarceration technology they're using. Everything is local innovations in India and very accessible. The pricing is very reasonable. Amazing work that they're doing. Amazing work. Only thing is it has to be scaled and replicated. But yes, if we could do that, all the slums or the housing places where the underprivileged are living could be addressed. Yeah. Yes, Sarda. Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, it is our everyday life with our water consumption, with our food consumption, with our textile consumption. So it's the consumer at an individual level. At an industrial level, again, you have various needs that need to be done. And big way that this can be affected is the policy of the governments that are rolled down. Because when there is a top-down pressure, then the systems will change. So it is multi-level, multi-industry, multiple levels of revisiting everything that we've been doing. We cannot live like we were living a few years ago. If we were to change, then we have to revisit everything. And no easy solution.
Okay, next question is from Sanjeev Jain. Generation from solar per megawatt of installed capacity is poor due to climate change and high rate of degradation in India, comparing it to other countries.
I may not be the expert to give you the technical answer for this, but broadly what is happening in this industry is we are very reliant on China. So we import materials from there, and whatever industries that you're seeing here today, the solar panels or whatever the growth that is happening in terms of both output and production, the technology and the resources, materials, we are highly reliant on China. And how do we get away from that, and how do we increase the output is something that the entire globe is fighting or learning from China, so to say. Again, a lot of R&D is needed to revisit the materials that are being put to use. Like I shared in my graph, the cost is going down, but the reliance on an external country is still there. And in terms of megawatt, I am no technical expert, so I will hold on to that answer. I don't have a response right now.
So there is a question and an answer. One, Mr. Sanjeev Jain has asked, disposal of discarded scrap of solar modules after its life would be an issue. And an answer also, generally solar panels don't produce any hazardous waste and 90% can be recycled, but the process is very energy and cost intensive. So it's not sustainable in the long run.
Yeah. So right now, China is going through this because they were one of the early adopters at scale. There are what we're calling as solar forest dump yards where these panels have been dumped. But again, if you were to look at it with optimism, the type of panels that were being produced maybe 20, 25 years ago, which are now in the dump yards, have been revisited, and the panels that are being made today are much more recyclable, so to say. It's not an easy answer. I'm not saying it can be completely recycled, but they're better, far better. And so as the cycle goes on, hopefully we will arrive at a point where both the amount of material that we're taking in from earth and the way that we can recycle will also improve. And that's where more innovation and research needs to go in. But yes, it is our problem of too many panels, and what do you do with it once they finish the life of this panel.
Yeah. Will you please ask your question? Akash Babu.
Thank you for giving all those great insights. One thing, is there any incubator for urban rainwater harvesting and urban flooding, which you can direct it? I'm working on a solution for that. And the second thing, what you have brought to our minds is, yes, innovation is the most abused, misused, and overused term. But at a ground level, yes. And the solar panel efficiency is one thing, that is the supply side of it. And the usage side of it, what contributed for the solar boom is, all things being equal, the consumption of electricity through LED, which have driven the, what do you call, the first impact. So my question remains, I need an incubator where I can, what do you call, pick this idea and the impact of rainwater harvesting system in a decentralized way and stop the urban flooding, because at one time we are facing the water shortage and the second time we are dealing with excess water, which are two experiments. If there is an intervention here, it is going to be a best solution, what I think. But I need an incubator for that, if you can suggest.
Sure. So I'll just repeat your question, sir, because I couldn't get clearly. One was on solar, and the second one was on rainwater harvesting, right?
Okay. I need an incubator, or I need a, what do you call, the help for urban rainwater harvesting, which will simultaneously balance the excess water during the rainfall, because the rainfall is going to come in 1 hour of electricity supply, and with each degree of increase in humidity, there will be 7% of heat generation. Yes. So that is one part. So the water harvesting and urban flooding. So yes, I am working on the intervention here. I need an incubator support, not funding, but incubator support.
So today, T-Hub sort of supports a lot of the startups that are coming in with what they're calling as social impact in sustainability, not necessarily making a profit out of it or needing money, but big on impact. So right now, I'm not sure if it's still open, but Mercedes right now has a running T-Hub cohort where they've opened up for applications where you can say that this is what I'm solving at scale, and this is for impact on environment, and I'm sure you'll be considered. So a way to look at it is, a lot of times we're waiting for someone to tell us that these are the incubators. But right now, if you just search saying that rainwater harvesting impact, which are the incubators that are helping, you'll get a big stream of names, I'm sure. It is one of the biggest focus areas for both the governments and also for the NGOs. So one I would say is T-Hub. They do have social impact groups right now running, only focused on sustainability. Um, and also there are some other non-profits in Hyderabad today working with the local urban governments, where they're trying to sort of delineate the stormwater and the rainwater getting, drainage water and the rainwater getting mixed up. There is a lot of work going on in that space too. So both the local governments and incubators like T-Hub will be a good point to start with. I can share the link of this Mercedes group cohort that they advertised recently.
I have gone through it, madam, but it is not fully focused on urban rainwater harvesting. And
Okay.
one thing, and you can I get the what do you call the transcript of whatever you have said, because
Yeah.
these are accurate things. I have
Yes.
seen all the incubators and all. What they are providing is they are not the facts are not what
Yes.
do you call it, reliable. Yours is, if you can share it, it would be of great help.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Wishwatalk, for bringing the what we call the greatest of things, which where we leave what we call the money, properties, and all to our children, but at the cost of clean air, clean water, and good food. You are bringing that to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This question is from Rujula Batwar. Sir, I would like to I'd like to pursue marine biology. Does anyone know about it? Like, is it worth pursuing it nowadays?
From a career perspective, I know in India right now there is not too much focus on it, but going forward, both the food systems and also some products, for example, like recyclable plastic, which is being made from algae. A lot of the sea produce is now coming into visibility, which was not the case earlier. So I would say it's far better than what it was earlier, but I'm not sure if I can promise you that once you take this, there is a robust career out there. But blue economy as a whole is being focused on. So I would say overall, the number of jobs that will shoot up in marine will go up. But from your individual perspective, I don't know what your interests are. So I can't say that, oh, yes, go for it and you'll get a job. But that promise, I don't think any one of us can make here. But as a category, it is certainly blowing up.
This is from Kailasha Nathan. Please, can you tell something on oil spills by many ships spoiling and polluting our water bodies? Any data?
I may not be able to give you data, but I can say that there are a lot of non-profits, especially the ones I shared also about ocean cleanup. They are doing a lot of work in terms of cleaning up spills. And again, we need to see it from a lens of the expense that is involved. There is technology, but imagine if the oil spill is happening in the middle of the ocean, right? And even if you have a solution, you need to send the solution all the way there to sort of mop it up. So the focus is right now on clearing spillages which are closer to coastal waters, which is what is happening with a lot of the US cities, which are the coastal cities. Recently near Florida and California and other places, wherever they've seen oil spillages, the focus has been in mopping it up, and they're using certainly new innovative ways to clean that up rather than allowing it to sink through. I may be able to give you some specific cases and a lot of innovation happening there too, but the focus is on cleaning up when that spill is close to the city versus what is happening in the deep oceans.
Okay. Yes, Saurav, would you like to continue?
Very good morning, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm doing my MBA in Sustainable Management in Nalanda University, and the field of agriculture is a field which can impact climate change to a greater extent. So my question to you is, with the growing focus on sustainable agriculture in India, how can the ancient agricultural practices which were inherently eco-friendly and resource efficient be effectively integrated or revived to complement modern sustainable farming techniques? And I also would like to know if there are any specific traditional methods that can hold greater potential in addressing current agricultural challenges like soil degradation, water scarcity, and climate change, ma'am.
Sure. So, see, some of the things that we always think the older systems were better is right in most cases, especially agriculture. But one thing that we all need to be aware of is the scale at which we produce today is maybe 1,000 times more than what our ancestors were doing. So some of the systems, for example, in the Northeast, you have Zyro, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Their agricultural systems are very regenerative. So you could leave the soil alone for a longer time. You would use the waste. You will use multiple crops. So there are some learnings that can be incorporated into our current practices for sure. But to reach the scale of produce that we expect today from a crop is much, much higher. So believing that ancient systems will automatically solve is a very, very I would not say it's a wrong notion. It will only solve to a certain extent. So we need to absorb the best practices, but also merge it with the new innovations to produce at scale. So one is, of course, common sense tells us don't put too much pesticide, don't put too much fertilizer. But we've seen in the case of Sri Lanka, for example, almost the economy came to collapse when they tried to switch overnight from stopping fertilizers to going to a production line which only included regenerative farming methods. The system collapsed. So we need to take into consideration that our produce has to still support the population. It still has to be economically viable to the farmer. At the same time, so there is a merge that is needed where you pick old practices, take the best of those learnings, and adopt it with a new scalable and high production outlook. So that's the reason I shared this company's name, because they're revisiting the whole system in a way where it works for the farmers, where you're still adopting some old mechanisms, but with the new focus.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I think Amit just left. Okay, the next question is materials of this speech is available, reference books if any required. Someone is asking.
Sure. I think this presentation doesn't have the sources right now. I'll add the sources and then share it with Vishwa team, and they'll put it out for consumption.
This is from Dr. Sambamurthy Nanduri. How can we accelerate the adoption of breakthrough climate technologies while ensuring they are accessible and equitable for both developed and developing countries?
So that's a very big question, sir. Actually, right now, a lot of these learnings are lying with more industrialized countries, and at the global level, they're calling them the global north, which is the Western countries, including Australia, although it's in the south of the direction wise. So global north has the money, it has the industrial know-how, and also the resources to do it. But the global south, which is relatively poorer, still developing countries, doesn't have the money or the resources, or the populations are huge. So we are dependent very much on the global north sharing their knowledge, which is what at a global level the drive is for. So if you look at this conference of parties, COP meetings that are happening at a global level, one is for desertification, one is for biodiversity, one is to control more on the climate change. All of them are trying to push the global north to share knowledge and money. And there is a completely new topic or a different topic called climate finance, where hopefully the global north will agree to sort of share their monies with the global south so that we can adopt these technologies and innovations. So it's not an easy answer to your question. It's a global fight, and but the global south, and especially India, is at a very, I would say, at a critical point, because we have known how to solve for ourselves with the population size that we have. If we can take it to the next level, then we have the answers that can be answers to the entire global south. We have solved it in technology. For example, in the financial systems, when we say UPI, a lot of the countries want to use that united payment interface, what we use Google Pay and PayPal and all of the Paytm and other things. We've cracked it at a scale. Similarly, if we find solutions that are scalable in the climate change realm, then we will be able to support the rest of the African nations, the rest of the global South, which need these. We can't keep waiting for global North to sort of provide it. And that's the reason, even this talk, I was very glad that Vishwa team accepted it, because how do we sort of think from a more research perspective, from an innovation perspective, to solve our own problems is something that we can take to the world. And right now, it is more at a sensitization level. Then once people understand that these are the areas to focus on, like ma'am was sharing, there are some non-profits coming in with waste management solutions. Similarly, we will need something in agriculture. We need in textiles. If we find our solutions, we can take it to the globe. We can't keep waiting for the richer and the industrialized nations to share their know-how. But hopefully they'll give us the money. That's the fight. So you can look up on this topic of climate finance, global South versus global North fight, and you will see all the history of where we are right now.
Yeah. Amit, would you like to ask your question yourself?
Thank you, Shivani. Hi, thank you for that wonderful insight. Good afternoon. And it's actually a question, it's a comment. Given the current situation, how would you comment on the net zero emissions of zero by 2050 for the world? That's number one question. And number two, I keep asking everybody who works in climate change, the kind of policies that we're trying to address when it comes to sustainability, I'm afraid, would you like to comment if that would not create any kind of a beefy moment between the have and have-nots, the rich and poor?
Yeah. So the first one is net zero. Again, India specifically has pointed out very clearly that we will be done, or we will aim to finish, or at least aim for 2070. The rest of the globe has agreed for 2050. And we have said we are still dependent on our coal, and we will not be able to do it by 2050, but 2070. And I think China agreed for 2060. But there are other countries in Europe that are aiming for 2040. And again, for the audiences here, just to clarify, what this means is, if a particular industry is emitting X amount of carbon emissions, what do they do to sort of alternatively to sort of minimize this impact? So whatever alternatives that they do, they need to bring it to net zero. So our country and across the globe, all nations have agreed to something called as nationally determined contributors, in which we agreed that as a country, our net zero goal is 2070. So it's a huge undertaking. And as a part of that, every industry which is emitting this carbon emissions has to come with solutions of what they're going to do to sort of balance out. So cement industry, our construction industry, our fuel industry, every one who's polluting, right? So each industry now has a know-how that is being built up. It is still not anywhere close to finding solutions, because what we need are at scale. And again, even if we find solutions, they may be super expensive. But right now, every industry has committed to it. For example, in the cement case, there is a forum where all the cement companies have come together and said, okay, we will do XYZ to sort of see how to go net zero. So it's very industry specific right now. At the same time, from a government's perspective, for example, we have another initiative called 30 by 30, which is 30% of our land and water will be conserved by 2030. So there are different initiatives that are happening in each field, and all of it has to come together, which is a huge undertaking. And like you said, will haves and have-nots have a fight against this? It will only come if our food systems and our air that we're breathing in collapse. And the richer may get oxygen to sort of breathe in, and everyone is left with the polluted air around us. But from an industry's perspective, I can say it's not so much as haves and have-nots. It is technical know-how, and the intent is there right now, which was also missing earlier. So we moved to intent. We now need to build our technical capabilities and be willing to put the resources to say, I may reduce my profit, but I will be green, which is right now the industry has accepted this. In other countries, and much more so in our country than the rest of the world, actually. So we are on a good path, so to say, in terms of direction. The speed and the resources that we need is something that we always are reminded that our population size and still a developing country, so to say. But from the government's intent, like the two things that I shared here, whether it's the solar or green hydrogen, are just examples. If you go deeper, our systems are being set in a way where we go green for sure. But can we really reduce our reliance on coal is very questionable. Our entire system runs on that. So innovation is one of the ways where we can speeden up all of this, and that's the reason I chose this topic. But in a nutshell, all industries, all systems have to focus on it, and we don't know really whether we'll be able to hit that goal or not. I mean, 2070 seems to be too far off. But
yeah. Shada, I also would like to add one comment. Probably going forward with all your sessions, please include health and climate change.
I wanted to. This
Please.
was
It's my request, because people, when we talk about climate change, we all feel it, we will talk about it. But when we say climate change is your health, yes, people will come on to their reality. So please do include that, because I think that's how we have to flag off.
I actually had some slides that I removed. It was just
okay.
Health is one, and even your personal lifestyle is another.
Lifestyle, yeah.
Lifestyle. Travel is another one, where logistics, basically the logistics industry, entire shipping, aviation. I don't think there is a vertical that is not going to be hit. You take women and children; they're going to be the worst hit. You take your economy that runs on manual labor, which we don't talk about too much. How do you think a guy is going to go and build in a temperature of 42 plus degrees?
Yes.
Not possible.
Not possible.
So there are so many, it's our entire life in terms of, we can't verticalize it, but health is, of course, if the temperatures in Antarctica, yesterday there was an article, if your zoonotic diseases go up, your all those that are in permafrost. Now, when the temperature goes up, these icebergs are going to sort of melt, right? And we don't know what is sort of buried in that with that lower temperature. When they start to thrive in a higher temperature, the amount of diseases that are going to hit us, we don't know. We really don't know. COVID was just one tip of the iceberg. So are we able to predict and do anything to solve is another completely different thing.
Just finished my Harvard Medical School's yesterday's session on zoonotic diseases from CCDC. So I think I've realized that, what mistake I've been doing. I'm not including health. So I wanted to share and spread this message now. Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you.
We'll move on to our next question. Mr. Mukesh Kumar, anything on the policies of climate change? Regarding climate change?
Yes. So India has been at the forefront. Our Ministry of Environment and Forestry now is called MOEF. It was earlier MOEF. Now it is MOEFCC. So the ministry is responsible for not just environment and forestry, but also climate change. And we also have most cities and states producing a policy paper on climate change. Telangana is one of the few states that has not yet published it. There is a draft that is there somewhere, but Tamil Nadu has been at the forefront. Even states like Jharkhand have a separate policy for climate change. These are policies on paper, and I'm not going into the implementation of it, but certainly there is visibility, there is understanding that we cannot continue as we are. So policy, again, Dharmavana publishes climate newsletters regularly. In one of the newsletters, we highlighted all the climate change related policies that each state has produced. I could share that. On paper, it is certainly there. We're still not yet there, but the intent, and I am happy to say that India is at, I won't say forefront, but we're acting on it. Usually we put it out on policy and then nothing happens, but we're certainly moving. So for example, in Tamil Nadu, we have an excellent IAS officer. Her name is Ms. Sahu, and she is doing wonderful work with the way afforestation programs are going on. Mangroves are being, conserved. They have a separate group of youngsters that they've taken as green warriors. I hope I got the name right. Where the youngsters are being sent out through the state to sort of work with various verticals to solve for various aspects of climate change. So there is certainly visibility. The younger civil officers are very hands-on on this. You see your forestry officials are much more vocal on X, where they share what's going on. Policy and intent is there. Our problem is more with the scale at which we need to solve. We are not a small country. We are not a large country with small population. 1 in 6 people in the world are in India. So our issues are very different, and the things that can solve at scale, and that's the reason I'm saying if we are able to crack it, we will be able to solve for the whole world.
Yeah. Our next question from Mr. Soni.
नमस्ते। मैं इस बात पे ध्यान देना चाहूंगा कि सोलर कुकिंग जो है वो धुआं रहित और साफ स्वच्छ ऊर्जा से कुकिंग है, परंतु तकनीकी विकसित होने के बाद भी लोग उसको अडॉप्ट क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे हैं? बड़े स्तर पर सोलर कुकिंग और सोलर ड्राइंग, ये दोनों एक सब्जेक्ट क्यों अनछुआ रह गया है, ये मैं जानना चाहता हूँ। सोलर कुकिंग एंड सोलर ड्राइंग आर व्हाट नॉट प्रमोटेड लार्ज स्केल, इस पे क्या हो सकता है?
तो मुझे ये सोलर कुकिंग के बारे में स्पेसिफिकली आंसर नहीं है, पर अभी जो गवर्नमेंट का पॉलिसी है, आई थिंक आपको म्यूट पे होने का, ओके, सो अगेन आई आंसर इन इंग्लिश, हिंदी इतना मेरा नॉट कंफर्टेबल, बट अभी गवर्नमेंट का कुछ स्कीम्स हैं, जैसे कुसुम स्कीम आप देख सकते हो, गवर्नमेंट का KUSUM, तो वो थोड़े पैसे दे रहे हैं कि आप आपके घर पे सोलर पैनल लगा सको, टैक्स कंसेशन भी है, और अपना इंडिया का इतना अच्छा सिस्टम है जहाँ पे सोलार अगर आप लगाए तो आप ग्रिड से कनेक्टेड हो, विच इज ये दूसरे कंट्री में पॉसिबल नहीं है। सो अभी आप सांची करके एक सिटी है मध्य प्रदेश में, सांची, आप देख सकते हो, पूरा सिटी इट्स अ what should I say, tourist place. The city has now 90% of the power comes from solar panels on the house. And when it rains, they're still not paying for the power because their system is connected to the central grid. तो ऐसे स्कीम्स हैं जहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट बोल रही है कि आप जाके ज्यादा सोलार यूज करो और उसके लिए आपको पैसे भी दे रहे हैं। तो आप कुसुम स्कीम करके देखिएगा, घर पे अगर आप सोलार पैनल लगाने का है तो आपको कंसेशन मिलेगा और आपका पावर बिल भी कम हो जाएगा। तो आप कुकिंग का ही नहीं, पूरा जो कंजम्पशन कर रहे हो आप घर में, पूरा आप सोलार से कर सकते हो। तो भी ये चल रहा है।
मैडम, हाँ मैडम, मैंने अभी एक अलवर में ट्रेनिंग अटेंड किया PM कुसुम के ही। ये PM कुसुम 26 तक है, सन 2026 तक, लेकिन उसमें केवल कंपोनेंट में 4% ही पूर्ति हो पाई है, 96% अभी लक्ष्य बाकी है, परंतु लोग आगे नहीं बढ़ रहे हैं या गवर्नमेंट की स्कीम ऐसी है कि वो नहीं हो पा रहा है। और सोलर थर्मल पे बहुत कम है गवर्नमेंट का ध्यान, सोलर थर्मल पावर प्रेजेंट मैंने बनाने के ऊपर और सोलर थर्मल हीटिंग के ऊपर कम है ध्यान गवर्नमेंट का। इस पे जरूरत है कि बढ़ावा दिया जाए सोलर कुकिंग ड्राइंग दोनों को, सोलर पावर जनरेशन थर्मल टेक्नोलॉजी से कंसंट्रेशन के आधार पर वो भी किया जाना चाहिए। धन्यवाद।
Thank you for bringing it to everybody's notice. Then सोलर पार्क ने राजस्थान के में बायोडाइवर्सिटी पर बुरा प्रभाव डाला है और इस एरिया का तापमान 2 से 3 डिग्री बढ़ा दिया है। इस पर कोई जवाब दीजिए।
So, the non-profit that I work with works in both conservation and climate change, and this is the biggest challenge when you're trying to find solutions for climate, building climate resilience. Your conservation may be affected, and one example is what this gentleman has brought to our notice, which is you have huge solar power parks, then you're actually disturbing the life that is there. So it is a very, very thin balance, and there are no answers. There is no such thing that ये बंद कर दिए तो conservation ज़्यादा होगा, conservation ज़्यादा हुआ तो climate change नहीं रुकेगा. So there are very tough calls, and I feel the future CEOs and decision makers will be more of ethics professionals rather than execution people, because these are very, very challenging decisions to be made. But at the end of it, for example, this Rajasthan one, yes, some birds have been affected. And these parks are no longer small parks. They go across 2,000 hectares. And there are reverse cases where some other birds are coming in much more because they're finding water there. So there are no easy answers. ये switch नहीं है कि हम ये बोले कि ये करें तो ये solve हो जाएगा. It is a very, very big moral discussion, so to say.
So the same person has continued it, but I think for awareness sake, we should mention it. 22 lakh kg, that is Rajasthan state tree के पेड़ों को काटकर सोलार पार्क लगाए गए हैं. क्या ये पर्यावरण के लिए की सुरक्षा कहलाई जाएगी? I know you've answered the question, but I just wanted to share.
So I'll stress on this. So that is why I feel innovation and revisiting our way of thinking and solving has to be at a scale which is at a huge scale. So for example, in the solar, if someone comes up with a vertical way of getting power so that you don't put power plants on land, then that is a way where you're not, then your way that you affect the land will come down. But we don't have easy answers for this. Someone has to innovate a way where you can stick something on a building and that will go maybe 50, 100 meters high into the air, and then you don't need to put the panels like this. Then there are other people who are saying solar panels laga diye, but we'll make sure that you use the land underneath that. So you do sheep grazing and grow small herbs in that shade. So there are very tough balancing choices. Is it right to set up a solar park by cutting a forest? The answer may be no, but then we don't have place. See, please think about this. India has the largest population. We still need to feed our people. We need power for everything. So there are very tough choices. There is no, where are you going to put that huge plant? Maybe the ocean is the answer. I don't know. But these are the things that we need to revisit.
Next question from Shrabanti Chakravarti. What are the initial steps we can take to manage microplastics pollution? And as the major part of oceans is affected by this, what are the steps we can take?
One is to first, of course, cut down the amount of plastic that is reaching the oceans. I did not put some pictures up, but there are a lot of startups that are doing trawlers where, you know, it stops the plastic from getting into the river water itself. And then this river water, when it is going and joining the sea, then hopefully you're stopping the plastic going into the oceans. So first is to stop getting the plastic into the water itself. That is the first step. A lot of startups are doing this. But again, all of these are trials. These are not huge scalable solutions that everyone is able to afford. One is scale and the second is affordability. So there are solutions. Recently, a news article said that they found plastics in the womb of the mother. So a baby, even before it is born, is having microplastics in its body. So that's the state we are in. You have to cut down plastic, replace plastic with something else. And when plastic is used, it cannot enter water. And once it enters water, how do you remove it? So there is no, see, one of the things with climate change is you can't do, like they say, one gunshot and everything is solved, right? We don't have answers like that. We have some 1,000 solutions to pick one to solve one issue. So this microplastics is like maybe 15 different things have to happen at scale, and then we can stop. One is stopping. The second one is how do you undo? Undoing is still another big portion of work. Again, no easy answers. But can we stop using plastics? Even I'm using this. I can't. So that's where the trade-off is.
Okay. Sanjeev Jain, e-waste is increasing rapidly due to wide acceptance of electronic items and due to its short life. Why enforcement of repairability regulations is still strictly not yet enforced, I think.
So Indian government again has come up with a new policy where it is called right to repair, I think. I hope I got the phrase right, which is basically saying if you buy a TV and 50 year something happens, then the company is responsible for fixing it. So just like Right to Information Act, like RTI, now they're saying there is a right to repair, which is company that is selling is responsible for repairing it. They can't say replace your parts with new things. They should help you fix it. So this is something that there is a new policy. I'm not sure whether it's rolled out or not. I know it was in the draft stage earlier. So government is doing its part. Then the second level is once these products are out in the field, when someone is dumping away their laptop or their phone, they're replacing. Indian systems are brilliant in this way. So we have a waste collection process that is globally unbeatable. Someone will come to your house and pick it up. Not possible anywhere else. We have those systems, and especially Telangana, I know the government is looking at training their staff, training the rag pickers to be more aware of how they can do electronic waste collection and also recycling. So the promise that is being told is, see, wherever you can make money, people will focus on it. With electronic waste, battery waste recycling and all of this, I don't know if I'm getting the number right, and I heard it in Vishwa Foundation's meetup earlier, where I think around 35 CPUs, if you recycle, you'll get a gram of gold. Okay, so the materials that are there when you recycle have a good price. And when you show the promise, then an ecosystem will evolve itself. Wherever there is money, automatically businesses will come in. So for recycling of electronics, I have great hope that the systems are already coming into place. Even in the new state of Andhra Pradesh, I think they have a policy for electronic re-waste cycling where they're setting up places physically. Everyone knows that you can't keep bringing in new materials. For every electronic item that we are putting to use, or a battery, for example, lithium, there is only that much of lithium left in the earth, right? And if we are importing from other countries, we're paying extra. So everyone knows that what is there in the country cannot go out, which means you have to recycle. And when there is money involved, when there is commerce involved, solutions will attract itself to build an industry out of it. And that's happening. Policy-wise, it's happening. Industry-wise, it's happening. Is it scalable? Is it something that we are able to do in the best way possible? No. But it will take a lot of evolution and time to sort of fix itself.
Yeah. With this, I've completed all the questions. Thank you so much, Sarada. You've been so patiently answering all of them.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you to all the audience. Wonderful audience. I mean, such diverse people coming from different parts of the country mostly, and some abroad. Thank you to each of you to ask questions which are relevant and which is the need of the hour. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Ma'am, please join in the breakout room.
Sure.
The link will pop up on the screen.
One last question. What can be the solution for dealing with floods like in Bihar? Sorry.
Again, like I was saying, our entire city infrastructure is not first livable for human beings itself. We do not have planned cities for our, I mean, this is a historical reason for it, but we're at a stage right now where our cities are not planned. In addition to not being good enough for people to live, the next level is we don't have systems to sort of safeguard our water. But right now, there is a revisit happening where urban planning and places where the first step is rainwater, store it. If it is drainage water, don't mix it with rainwater. This is understood. In terms of execution, some states have been ahead of others. Telangana has been better than others. I'm not sure of Bihar itself. This Bihar floods maybe is not urban and it is rural. We've seen it in Andhra Pradesh where an existing river's path was changed long back, but now the river regained its original path and the city was flooded. So again, most of the things that you're seeing is our population is so huge. Please don't forget at every step that we are looking at answers, we cannot displace 1 million people into another location and say, let the river go in its own path. Now, if you want to stop the river from flooding, one is other countries you don't see so much is because their infrastructure was built in a way where the cities evolved around the river and it was thought through. For us, that is not the case. Our cities have organically grown. Another 1 million people will come into Hyderabad, they'll figure out their own way. The cities have not been set up to absorb more and more inflow. So we don't have traditional setup. But the good thing is, now that we know, we'll use the best practices to fix it, which will hold good for another 100 years. In other European countries, what they've set up in the 70s is not working right now. So, for example, last, I think 2 weeks ago in Spain, a city called Valencia, which is one of the tourist attractions there, was flooded in such a big way that the entire city is full of sludge. the mud that comes in through the rivers. But the good thing that happened, and can't call it a good thing, but entire citizen group, the entire population came back to clean it up. Now they feel more involved. They pulled down the king and they said, please go back to where you came from. Don't come with these answers to us. Fix this. So there is a human element of angst and anger that is shooting up, which will push the governments to make solutions more thought through. In India, we don't have an answer for even places where we have the money today, even in the cities. In the urban areas, it's even worse. In the rural areas, it's even worse. But what I can tell you is, from a thinking perspective, like the geospatial technology is so much better right now. We can map our rivers. We can see our weather patterns much better right now. And all of this used to sit in some bureaucracy earlier. Now it's been opened up. A company like Zomato put up weather stations everywhere and they said this knowledge is open for all. Our people who are going to deliver food can check this when they think that there's a rainfall, or there's a prediction system put by a corporate. So the push is coming in from public. The government also understands, and they're opening up systems which will mean that more people will be able to contribute. So our maps for rivers and water systems is getting better. And again, that is not a solution, but at least information is coming now. We're able to predict. When the prediction comes, the government should be ready to say, okay, vacate or put systems. So this is an ongoing process, but can we solve it overnight? I don't think so.
And I have a question. If you see Andhra and Telangana, we have rivers and we have a very good canal system which has been developed. But I'm not sure if it's the same in UP and Bihar, where the Ganga flows. Also because the force with which Ganga flows, it's not easy for people to do anything on it. No matter, my personal experience there, because I've come out from an infrastructure company, and I see there's a shortage of canal systems out there. And I see that working in the river, like when we built bridges, it wasn't easy. So what do you have to say on that?
See, again, from an India perspective, if you see, right, we didn't have a way to plan this through. We built dams. We built our irrigation systems in slightly richer states, like the southern states more so than the others. But if you go to the traditional reasons, even in a state like Andhra Pradesh, during the Britishers' time, I think it was, they say, Cotton Dara, who sort of controlled the Godavari Delta. Okay, then the bridges came and then the irrigation system, and the state became richer because people could do 3 crops at a time. But there was a thought process of how do you save fresh water from entering into the city, into the sea, and helping irrigate other lands. So it is a very, at that point, he could execute it because they had power and the money and the people, right? But all of those have to come together right now if you want to do anything. And that's why I'm saying it's no easy answer. Even if you know today you have to build a river system, it's quite possible that there are 1 million people on this side and there are 1 million people on the other side. So this needs both policy-wise, you need people to agree. It's like building a road. Today, if you have to build a new road, and that's why Nitin Gadkari today is doing the magical things of building such a big highway structure. But before he came in, if someone had to build a road and you had to procure land, you know what the issues are. The same thing in the river too. Today, you know if this is a solution. First, we don't know the solutions. Even if we know, displacing people and building systems for it may not. So, but prediction wise, can we do better? Yes, today there seems to be an answer. After that, what happens, we don't have an answer. And whatever solutions we find, if we are able to solve it for so many people, we will be the global leaders to answers to the climate change issues.
Pradeep, I hope your question was answered. With this, we'll move on to that.
Okay, thank you all so much for patiently listening to me.